Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to Critical Q&A. Oh, 493. My bad. Let me make sure that we've got... Yeah, okay, good. Let me just correct that real fast in the titling there. My bad. Got so excited about things. All right, good. Here we are, live. Thanks for joining me. Glad you could be here. Glad you care what I have to say about things. Might have a few things to share, might have a few answers to give today. We'll see. Let's go ahead and get the chat screen up as usual here and get the Q&A started as our first order of business. What with this being a Q&A show and all. In fact, let's go ahead and pop over to the host and chat. And please put your questions under this comment box. Thanks. Boom. All right. So good. So now I've got that Q&A box up there. We'll pop that on there and make it big so I can see it in front of me when you guys ask me questions. All right, we'll try that out. And hey, I have papers today. Oh, a lot of papers, actually. A lot of things to, well, a couple of things to talk about before we get into everything. But as always, our first order of business, it is now finally warming up here in Denver. Very happy that it is starting to do that. Because, in fact, let me switch over here and show you the beast. Oh, there I am in the way again. Let's get me out of the way and maybe a little smaller so you can see Benson there. There's our Benson cam for today. He is guarding the house. This is the other thing that he does. If he's not in the front, guarding from the living room couch, then he is back here in the backyard, keeping an eye out. I tried to get a little bit of an angle. You can see a little bit of the backyard there. And he keeps watch. There are 2 cats and a dog and kids that live in the house right across, right behind us, basically. And we have a shared yard with a fence, obviously dividing it. And he has grown very tolerant now of those kitties. For a very long time, Benson could not stop barking maniacally from this exact position when he, let's go back over here, when he would see those cats. And I let him out and he would bark from inside, and we had to actually set up a child doggy gate to keep him from seeing the cats, because he would just lose his damn mind every single time they were out there. And admittedly, I think the thing that set him off was a couple times, at least one of those cats had come over the fence into our yard. And Benson is not down with, he's very territorial. So he was absolutely not into sharing with these cats. But kind of through some passive training, just by letting him out and bringing him back in every time he started barking, and only then, because that was really the only thing I wanted him to stop doing, he learned to stop barking, and now he's chill out there, and he goes outside right on the fence. And he'll just stare and watch them. He'll sometimes talk with the other dog, bark, bark, bark. But now the cats can be outside, both of them, and he just sits and watches. And I honestly think he's probably trying to be friends. I don't think he wants to hurt them. I think he wants to be friends with them. Benson is probably one of the friendliest dogs I have ever seen. He has he's just not afraid of things. He's really wonderful that way. Okay, so anyway, there's my Benson thing here. I'll just comment here real fast. I hope you all got a chance to watch the 20-minute podcast I posted yesterday. I go really long or really short, right? It was exactly long enough to say exactly the things I wanted to say. And I'm fine on doing longer form stuff, but when I have something, to say, and that's all I want to say about it, then there it is. And and I had some points to make about maybe some, some anxiety that's going on out there. And if you're not feeling that, and I've had a lot of people respond negatively to my diatribe, to my podcast this week. I was really just trying to offer some solutions, some ideas, some suggestions, some advice about what to do, because we're in a situation that's not good, and a lot of people just don't see that yet. They just don't see it. They don't see it at all. And they don't want to see it. They won't see it. There's a normalcy bias that infuses people regardless of ideology, regardless, on both sides, any sides of any political fence. Normalcy bias exists. And it's just this head in the sand kind of denialism about how things are, that they don't want to look and see how things are because they want things to be normal. Everything's normal. Everything's fine, right? That meme, everything's fine. Everything's fine. That's normalcy bias. And I think that people need to be made aware, but they're going to take their time getting there. And I realized, there's a constant question, and we've talked many times about how to talk to people who are in a cult headspace and an extreme headspace. And, you can't even really, you shouldn't probably even mention the word cult when it comes to anything ideological these days, or anything having to do with Trump, because people just aren't going to hear what you're saying. They don't hear you. They hear what they want to hear. They hear, oh, this is somebody who, is somehow disagrees with me on such a core level, with my identity or something, that somehow I have to just tune them out, right? Or, somehow there's going to be such a problem here that I'm just not going to listen. No. And if I hadn't watched grown-ass adults do that to me about Scientology related stuff when I first got out of Scientology, then I actually wouldn't believe that grown-ass adults would act like little children when it comes to, not challenging their beliefs. But that is how people are. So it's best to probably just not go there, and because people are going to come to their own realizations about what's going on right now. And it's just slow. It's just slow. It's just all bad news, bad news, bad news. And nobody has yet, very few people in Trump land, in fact, I'll say hardly anybody in Trump land, and very few people actually on the even on the anti-Trump land have really completely grasped, I think, what's going on, big picture wise, the big stuff I like to talk about, at least. I think very few people are there. And that's why I'm just going to keep talking about it and throwing it out there as though it's, kind of obvious truth, because I think it is. But I think it takes some looking, and I think it takes a willingness to look. And I think that's really hard. It's certainly been hard for me in times in my life, right? I mean, who wants to, whether it's confronting or dealing with, having to clean the living room and, do some of us not wait till we have guests coming over to clean the living room, right? While other people are pretty fastidious about it. We all come at things in different ways. So don't blame people for having their head in the sand or whatever. It's not like they know that's what they're doing. It's funny. Anyway, that's why questions. That's why that's how you snap people out of stuff, and how you plant seeds is you ask them questions, right? That way they get to think about it. You're not just telling them stuff that they have to now process and agree with. They come to it, and it's so it's just such a key principle. Anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because it's going to become more and more and more clear as time moves forward here in the United States, what's actually going on, what's really happening here, right? And there's a lot of words being thrown around, authoritarianism, fascism, this, thatism, and whatnot. Do your best with that, but realize that the vocabulary is going to be all over the place because a lot of different people have a lot of different perceptions or ideas about how things are, and that's when they roll out words like that, it's more reactionary than it is real analytical or analysis based talk, right? So we'll see where things go, but they are going to get rougher. Economically, things are going to get tighter. There are, I believe, I believe that is what's going to happen because of the indications of what's going on, and I think we need to be prepared for that as best we can. And so that's why I encourage people to look at a diversity of views constantly. And if people tell me I'm in the cult of the left when I'm sitting here telling you to go get a diversity of views on things that are important to you, right, then that's when I know people aren't listening to what I'm saying. They're not even bothering to try. It's just they see something that's critical of something that they feel passionate about, and I'm instantly an asshole, right? Anybody is. This is just how people are. So, I get it, but it's still frustrating, but I'm not going to stop trying to give the best advice I know how to give. And this podcast this week was my professional level expertise. It was right on the stuff I know all about. But if people disagree with you, then they're going to tell you that your expertise is meaningless, that you are not a good critical thinker, that you never left the cult, and all the other crap that people throw at you in, defensive hostility, because they just can't deal with, looking at the world in a different way than they are. So we're just going to keep encouraging them to do so. That's what we're going to do. At least that's what I'm going to try to do. Okay, make sure you get your questions in the question box. I do see questions piling up in the queue there, which is great. Now we have some papers. Okay, I got some stuff. Here's why. I wanted to talk about this today because I was watching Dr. Mike. He's a wonderful guy, does these medical videos, debunks lots of stuff. And he did one of those sit down for 3 hours with like 20 people who are anti-vaxxers. And he went head to head, with like 20 people on that. And he did a video talking about it, which he dropped today. And I liked what he had to say. And he broke down some of the different categories or commonalities in the responses and accusations and arguments that he was getting from the anti-vaxxers. And I'm not doing here a reaction to that video, but he brought up a point that got me thinking a little deeper, or at least I try to go a little deeper. And so I wanted to share this, some of this with you. And the basic idea, and I'm going to get right to it, and I'm going to give you some stuff that might, again, I'm going to try to help today. But the basic idea is this. I don't have to read all these pages here to tell you. How are we doing, by the way? I haven't even gone over to the YouTube thing and checked and seen how we're doing. Okay, great. All right. Why would it be if we put anti-vax into the conspiracy theory, more general conspiracy theory bucket, conspiracy theorists, right? And they break down into all the different parts. So anti-vax is really just one aspect of a broader problem of people who, what they do as conspiracy theorists. Glom on to narratives and facts to support those narratives that are often very incomplete, right? They omit facts, they leave things out all the time, they refuse to acknowledge certain truths or facts because it's inconvenient or contradicts their narrative. But one thing that you find that I thought noteworthy about conspiracy theories is that there is a narrative connected to them constantly, right? It's not just the fact of a thing, but there's this story to it. And this is not original thinking to me. This isn't something that came up with Dr. Mike, but the idea that people think in narratives is not my original thought, right? We've known this for a very long time. But the point is that storytelling is not just a great way of teaching people things. It's an organic way of teaching people things because it's a natural way for us to process information and remember it. It just happens that we do. If you tell us a story, we get the point often better than if you just tell us the point, right? You put a story around it. You give characterization and personification and a moral, right? You get these morality plays, from the Middle Ages and whatnot. And these become fairy tales, or fairy tales draw from them. And now we have, comic books. But it's all the same activity on the part of people. We're telling each other stories, and not just creative stories, but stories that matter because they have messaging buried in them. And this is how we teach kids morality, right? Whether it's biblical stories, or whether it's superhero stories, or whether it's, reading old mythology or something, or we're inventing new stuff, or it's Grimm's fairy tales. However we're using stories, those stories are used to teach our children. And this is often how children develop the shoulds and the ought tos, and about their behavior and how to get along with other people and stuff, right, is what they learn in these stories. But I believe that can create, here's where we get back to the anti-vaxxers and what I was observing in the video and seen so many times with conspiracy theorists, is they have these stories connected to their conspiracies. And I believe the reason for that is because they are not aware that storytelling is a device that is used to teach people things. They believe the world actually is, and I believe this is a very common thing with people. They believe that the world actually is either is somehow supernaturally or karmically or organically, it's built into the universe somehow, that these narratives are actually reality, in that the world at large somehow responds to or reacts to our ideas of who is the good guy and who is the bad guy, right? We lay this template on the world and view the world through a lens of good people and bad people, and this is how the world is, right? But it's not that way. The world's not that way. There's no karma, there's no fate, there's no supernatural force watching over us. And even if there is, we don't need it to explain what I'm talking about right now. We want or need order. We bring pattern matching and order into chaos. That's what life does. And this is a form of that for us, right? We were rational creatures. We want the world to make sense. So we tell stories, but some of us take these stories too far. And they start laying these narratives over things. And the reason I'm talking this way is because what this leads to, I hope I'm making sense, because what this leads to is, when bad things happen, random, seemingly random, causeless, things that you can't easily point to a person or a thing and say, that's what did it, that mistake or that error or that evil being or that, conglomeration of events that were purposefully executed in order to create this effect or side effect. Somehow we can see what caused it, right? But there are things in the world that we can't see that. It's not obvious. It's not clear. In fact, it's just not even there. Just shit happens. And the actual reality of the world is that shit happens all the time to all of us 7 days a week for no good reason at all. You happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time to catch the microbe. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the airplane engine fell off and hit you in the head and killed you, right? I mean, it's just weird, stupid, silly things happen. And why'd the airplane engine fall off? Because it hit a bird. Like things that just don't, nobody caused that. But when you are driven by narrative thinking, where you believe that it's not just that where stories are reality and where there has to be good and bad and right and wrong and the forces of evil must perish under the sword of good, when this is how you live your life, and a lot of religious people do, for example, then that's a way to shape reality, and you can navigate the world that way. But then you'll run into these situations where really bad things happen, or could happen, like a child dies. And, well, it was the vaccine, right? And we immediately go to either what was unusual or what was different, or, what correlated with this, and we immediately assume causation. And that's the biggest, one of the hugest logical fallacies that conspiracy theorists engage in, right? Is correlation is not causation. Just because two things happen at the same time doesn't mean they had anything to do with one another in terms of causing one another to happen, right? That's something Dr. Mike did talk about, and of course he was absolutely right about that. But I wanted to go a little deeper as to why would people glom onto that in the first place? Why does it have to be that it's the vaccine or the Dr. Fauci? Or it has to be the people who enforce the masks. They're the bad people. They're the agents of Satan. Don't you get it? Where's that come from? Well, I think it comes from this. It's this what you might call the storytelling trap, right? And anyway, it's pretty interesting stuff. I got pages and pages of stuff here that sort of corroborates this idea. But that's the basic idea. And then I wanted to give you guys today, as I want to do, what do you do about that? Because we run into it all the time, don't we? I sure as hell do, and I'm not even looking for it, you just run into it. You run into, people who have ideas that you find like, what are you talking about? And you want to just, you want to slap them, but don't do that. It's not a good idea. Doesn't forward good critical thinking or good human relationships to go slapping people around. There is a video out there of this guy who just keeps slapping people, and it's one of the funniest videos I think I've ever seen. But that's just for humor, right? All right. So how to talk to someone who believes strongly. I put together a whole bunch of questions, and I thought that since I'm always talking about and advising you guys about ask questions, Socratic method, street epistemology, planting seeds, we use these terms all the time here for doing this, but I don't really give you guys enough ammunition, I don't think, when it comes to, well, what do I say? And it's not a script, and I think that's why I've avoided trying to do that, is because I'm trying to empower y'all to do it yourself, because you'll come up with the best questions in the moment. If you're on your toes and you know what you're doing with this, right, you'll come up with the best questions in the moment that are organic, natural to the moment, right, and are going to feel organic to the conversation you're having. If you go into script mode, it won't be as effective, and in fact, somebody could start thinking you're trying to manipulate them. Right? If you start reading off, or hold on a second, let me pull out my 3x5 card here and let me take a look at, you don't want to be doing that when you're trying to just engage in friendly conversation with people about their beliefs. So instead, here's just a ton of some examples that I thought I might throw out. And since we're doing this on video, you can always go back and watch it again later. Don't worry about, I'm going too fast or something. If you can always go back and watch this again later. But, since our tendency towards simple, good, bad stories can play a role in holding on to strong beliefs, as we just went over, right? I think we're clear on that. Love this stuff. Here are some ways you can approach conversations to help someone see a different point of view. First, be open-minded and listen actively. Don't have these conversations where you're just waiting for them to stop talking so you can hit them with the next thing you just can't wait to hit them with. If that's how you find yourself thinking while you're engaging in a let's say a belief conversation, you need to catch yourself, right? You need to be what's that term, right? Check yourself before you wreck yourself. I'm being overly dramatic. I don't, it doesn't matter really, but it kind of does. So, listen. Active listening is the point, right? People know when you're really listening to them or not. So if you're going to take the time to do this with somebody and care enough about them to try to have a conversation about deeply held beliefs, then care enough to listen, okay? Now, ask questions to understand their perspective. When did you first start believing in this idea? Oh, that's a great question. Oh, it opens up so much, right? When did you first start? And trace it back, right? What was it that was so intriguing about this belief? And oftentimes, if you dig, especially for older beliefs, the beliefs that have been held on for a while, you might dig up stuff this person's completely forgotten about, which could be very, very interesting. And pay attention, of course, the entire time that you're doing this to the emotions that the person is discussing or demonstrating. Also, it's not just about what they say, it's about how they feel. Boy, if there's one thing I've been trying to, that's the thing, right? So when did you first start believing in this idea? Or what makes this explanation feel right to you? It's a little challenging, but, I think that it will still draw interest, right? What concerns do you have that this belief addresses? Right? What's the context of this thing? How has believing this impacted you? When you first heard about this idea, what was your initial reaction? And there's a place where you might find a little common ground. If you're feeling like those ideas are a little, they might actually acknowledge that. Yeah, I know. I thought it was crazy too. You're thinking, good. There was one point in time when they saw that this wasn't true, right? So then they'll lead you down the path of how they changed their mind. And that's how you don't have a chance of undoing somebody's ideas if you don't understand how they got there in the first place, and never assume because most of the time you're wrong. Okay. Let's see here. Hope this is useful stuff here. All right, let's go. Can you walk me through the chain of events as you understand them? That's a good one too, right? What are the key pieces of information that led you to this conclusion? Right? So address the facts or address bits of information rather than events or experiences. Are there any parts of this that still feel uncertain or unclear to you? How does this belief fit into your broader understanding of the world? Again, asking for context and clarification. Has anyone else close to you expressed similar beliefs or concerns? What are the potential implications of this theory if it were true? This last one, by the way, on has anyone else close to you expressed similar beliefs or concerns, could open up the idea that maybe this person believes this stuff because they are connected with someone else who is important to them. They're either trying to impress them or have a relationship with them in some fashion, or they have a relationship and this person got involved in it, so they felt they had to. It could be something like that too. There's all kinds of reasons people get involved in this stuff. Now, you can also ask questions that affirm critical thinking, right? Kind of acknowledge their desire to understand things. For example, it's good that you're thinking critically about things. Asking questions is important. Then gently redirect towards examining the evidence for their specific belief, right? This might be where you could engage a little bit with some facts or figures. But again, keep it light, keep it simple, right? Keep it easy. You could say, hey, it's important to be able to analyze information. What are some of the ways that you evaluate whether something is true or not? Right? What's their standard of evidence? Not yours. What's theirs? Where's their bar? Right? Where's their line in the sand as to how they decide whether something is true or false or whatever, right? All right. Oh, here we go. You mentioned you've done a lot of research. What kind of different perspectives have you encountered? That's a great question, because then you get them telling you about what kind of opposition they may have run into or other diverse points of view they may have run into, and why they rejected them, which might be of interest or use. Maybe, maybe not. Thinking critically involves looking at all sides. What might someone who doesn't believe this theory say? That's actually challenging too, of course. But again, if you're in it and they're in it and you're having the conversation and it's not like, hostile or something, maybe you can get away with stuff like that. But this is a good one. How do you differentiate between something that feels true and something that is supported by strong evidence? That's a good question to ask. Where'd you learn about this? What kind of evidence supports this view? Right? Start maybe directing a little bit in the other area of evidence. Have you looked at other explanations or perspectives on this? How reliable do you think this source of information is? Can you tell me more about that specific evidence that you find most convincing? All right, let's go right to the core of it if we could. But I would never ask that question first. I'd want to first contextualize the beliefs and understand exactly what's going on with why they believe this, and then dive into this stuff, right? Have you looked into the background or credentials of the people or websites sharing this information? They might start feeling attacked if you're attacking their sources or something. But again, it's a valid question, just a matter of timing and context. Have fact-checking organizations or experts in the field address this theory? What did they find? Maybe this person doesn't know. That's another possibility, by the way, right? Is that you're so sure this person believes this absolute nonsense and should believe this other thing, but they're not even aware of the other thing. All they know is the thing they think, right, or believe. Could there be alternative explanations for the evidence you've found? Now, there is also suggesting that there's entering nuance into the conversation or the belief set, right? Because when we're dealing with extreme beliefs and you're doing this kind of thing, then you can predictably expect a lot of absolute black and white thinking. It's not maybe, it's not could be, it is this way. That's kind of why you're having the conversation, is because the person's so down the rabbit hole on that. So you could say things like, sometimes things can be really complicated and it's hard to understand everything that's happening. And that can alone, just that. I've said this many times in conversations, right? Just introducing the idea of nuance and complexity can start seed planting a little tiny bit all on its own. Sometimes big events have many different factors at play. What are some of the complexities you see in this situation? Right? Get them to list out what they think is, oh yeah, absolutely, things are complicated. Like, they'll agree with you on stuff, but they're not thinking that way or using it that way. So challenge them, but do so in an encouraging way with questions like that. Yeah, it's complicated. Like flat Earth, man. What kind of complications do you see involved with flat Earth anyway? Or what kind of layers do you see involved in that? Are there any aspects of this that aren't fully explained by the good versus bad narrative? Right? Kind of step outside of that for a second and ask them anything about that. Could there be a middle ground or less extreme explanation for what's happening? How do you account for information that doesn't neatly fit into this whole framework you've built? What about this other thing over here? How do you account for that? And of course, most of the time they will be denying it, ignoring it, or ad homineming it, right? It comes from, it's from CNN. So of course, anything from CNN is just forget it, right? Oh, okay. Well, so if you heard that same thing from Fox, what would you do? Right? Or whatever their news source is. Oh, well, if you heard that same person say that on a news station that you did agree with, then what? Again, seed planting, I hadn't thought about that. That's exactly what you want. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Boy, if you can get that you're almost done. It's almost like, okay, good. We're done for the day, All right, a little bit more and then we'll wrap up here. Here's the last one, because I wanted to go on this one. Let me ask you, is this helpful? I got more. I'm going to go over this one more section. You guys tell me in the comments if you want me to keep going on. This one's important because it focuses on feelings or needs. How does believing this make you feel? big, broad, open question, and you could lead to many more specifics. Does it help you feel more in control of things to think this way? What are your biggest fears or anxieties related to this topic? Boy, there's a treasure chest to open up if you're ready for it, right? Does believing in this offer a sense of clarity or understanding in a confusing world? Do you feel like this belief helps you connect with others who share your concerns? Right? Community building. Does understanding this make you feel more prepared or able to protect yourself or your loved ones? Right? Security, safety, right? These are emotional needs. Okay, good. Nobody's telling me anything in the comments, so I'm going to keep going because I do want you guys to have this. You can ask what if questions. Encourage them to think about other possibilities. What if the situation wasn't caused by a secret group? What else could explain this? What else could have happened? Did you ever think about any other way of thinking about this? Like, does this have to be the way that it is? There couldn't be any other possibility? And if so, fine. Now you know where their head's at, right? But if you can get them thinking about other possibilities, I would say that would be a better place to be. What if the people you believe are bad actually have different motivations or are acting based on incomplete information? Benefit of the doubt, right? What if the good side isn't entirely innocent or makes mistakes? What if the situation is more a result of a series of smaller, less intentional events? What would it mean if some of the core assumptions of this theory turned out to be incorrect? Right? And if you're not engaged with the person, then you're going to hear stuff like, well, it wouldn't matter because I know this is true anyway, right? I'm sorry, I don't mean to say you're not really engaged with them, but you're not making any headway at all if the responses you're getting are nothing is going to move me, nothing's going to change my mind. It's like, wow, that is hardcore in cement. Do you really? And then you might want to actually address that. Right? I mean, you might shift a little bit into some of the ways that they think and challenge some of the ways that they think. Like, oh, do you find it useful to think in absolutes in black and white? Is that useful in your life, right? To be able to just fade out everything except this must be true, you know? And of course they do think that way, so they should say yes. But if they go, well, I hadn't thought about it that way. Good, right? You're making progress. So anything you can do to bust that sort of static, fixed thinking up, right? Anything you can do to mess with that. All right. I will wrap it up. I can see that people are not happy with me doing this. So let's go ahead and start answering your questions. Sorry, guys. All right. Let's go here and get to it. All right, first question. Have you seen the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct yet? If so, what were your thoughts on it? I have seen a lot about it. I know that it's going to be expensive. I don't have any thoughts on the technical specs of it. I have not yet checked it out at that level. I was just more into I was more reading about the availability of it. So yeah, we have a Switch, and I'm probably just going to keep playing games on that. So I'll just keep going there. Okay, carry on here. Mimi Super Teeny, how are you? I am fine. Thank you for asking. I appreciate that. Mehdi, would you describe the current USA politics as fascism? You know, that's a word that I would probably, I have used, and so I want to clarify that I would use it, but I would use it in an informal way. I would not use it in a strictly academic sense, because in that sense, we're not a fascism. But I was watching a Vlad video today about some of this stuff, a couple of videos that he put out over the last couple of weeks on this, and I was digging into this topic a little bit, trying to think of how I think about it. Because I don't want to just take somebody else's talking points and repeat them to you. And this is a nuanced subject as it should be. I will say that we are moving on a spectrum. If you're thinking of ideology as spectrums, then I would say that we are very definitely moving the dial, right, towards fascism, or towards a more fascistic state, in that there are characteristics of fascism that you can see developing or evolving, within our structures, and have been for some time. This is not a Trump phenomenon. Let's be clear about that. I've been trying to say that for months now, that it's not just about him. And even if he weren't in this picture, there are forces at play and things that have been happening, and historical forces, like we've talked about, that that push us in these directions. People are pushable, they are manipulatable, and they respond to things predictably, which is why we have these cycles of history, and we have governments rise and then fall, and rise and fall. And this is part of the downward spiral of a fall. This is what it looks like. And we didn't think, it could happen here. Of course it could happen here. We're human beings, and we put together imperfect systems. And our imperfect systems are constantly being worked on by predatory personalities, and they break down. And it reminds us, when we become complacent, as people do, that we have to stand up, get energetic, and fight for the rights that we have, because rights aren't just given to you. And fascism is one of the words that you could use to describe an environment where the government starts overplaying its hand, overusing its authority in an abusive or destructive fashion. And there are many, many people who have fallen mistakenly into the belief that our usual government structures and systems are themselves fascist or authoritarian or culty or bad, evil, horrible, must be broken down, must be torn apart. And you will find many, many people on the left saying that, as well as a whole slew of people on the populist post-truth right. So it's just different versions of the same story, right? Tear it all down, tear it apart. We have to rebuild something new. That is very, very much part of the core Trump populist messaging. And Trump's riding that, amongst many other things, to do what he's doing. Or that's one of the ways he's getting away with what he's getting away with, is because there's a core group of people who believe that anything he says is truth. That's culty. But it's also fascist. It certainly is not democratic, right, to simply believe something that some dear leader has to say. But this is a mindset that people fall into. There's a mindset. Maybe I'll say that, and I'll just move on today on this one. It's not a matter of people are neutrally just sort of sitting as a herd, and some leader comes along and says words to them, and suddenly they're all a bunch of, Nazis or something. There are forces at play that change how people think about things. And there are predatory personalities who use those forces for their advantage. And there have been, and these are patterns in history, right? So that's how I would describe what's happening in the USA right now. And so, big long-winded answer to say yes and no in terms of, is it fascism? But it's disturbing as hell. It is the beginning. What we're in right now ain't fascism. It's the beginning of a path towards what could be thought of as, what will be thought of as, and described as fascism, right? When you're ripping off, when you're taking citizens off the street, when you're denying that the law says what the law says, and you simply ignore it because dear leader says that what he wants and what his needs and desires are is actually what's the senior policy of this country. And the rule of law is no longer what is the senior consideration. That's one of the switches that gets flipped in this time period where we descend into tyranny. And there's a word I'll use, right? Because tyrannical rule is not, I don't have to go into some specific ideology, right? There's not tyrannyism. It's just tyranny, right? Whether we're talking about authoritarianism or predators or fascists or dictators or whatever, they're tyrannical. So like we use the word predator, maybe we could use the word tyrannical, right? And that is very definitely a way to describe the attitude and conduct of our current White House situation, and a willing and lapdog Congress that is going along for the ride, outside of a very few Democrats who are trying to step up and say something and at least do something to be noticed right now. But all the rhetoric around this right now is all the same as it's been every time the president changes. And so people are not yet willing to acknowledge that what's happening now is different. And that's why I get a lot of pushback, I'm sure. It's because people just don't want to hear it because they don't think that that's actually true, and that this de-evolution of our structures and systems, that we're all sort of pushing forward. They just don't want that to be true. And so, no, that's not how it is. It's the same as it's been in the past and all that. Well, certainly it is true that everything that's happening right now has historical precedents and rhythms, you could say, right? If history rhymes, then we can find lots and lots of that. But you can't I would caution, if we're going to be serious people today, then, and I love that phrase, then we need to understand that you don't just take pieces and bits from history and go, well, that's how it is now, therefore it's all going to be the same, right? It's not that simple, Simon. But you can construct a mosaic and then look to history and go, yeah, these things tend to go in this direction. And again, patterns and cycles of history tell you where we're going, in a general sense, right? And in that sense, yeah, we're on a bad road. Okay, let's carry on here. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to switch to that one. Let's go to Matt Bywater here. Matt, okay, there's a debate about whether to label, sorry, I can't see this here. Let me pop back up. There we go. All right, there's a debate about whether to label neurodiverse people as their disorder, an autistic, a psychopath versus a person with autism, psychopathic traits. What do you think regarding ADHD? Is it all defining? Oh, God, no. No. Autism isn't all defining. Psychopathy is not all defining. That's a good question because it allows me to soapbox about this for a second. Your condition is not you. Your disorder is not you. And if anybody is watching this and thinking that that's the case and that a condition that you have or a situation or mental framework or attitude or approach that you have or, some kind of neurodivergence that you have defines everything that you are, or that's how we should think about you, or that's how you should think about yourself, let me please offer you my opinion that that's total fucking horseshit. You are so much more than your disorders or any label that somebody can put on you. The sum total of you is so much more than any label. There is no way that any word or label could ever encompass the full scope of what a human being is. Even within our own world, we are 20 different versions of ourselves in one day. I wake up in the morning and I am a very different person from who I am at 3 o'clock, at 6 o'clock, at 9 o'clock. I mean, ask my wife. I'm a very different person. Which one is me? right? The asshole in the morning with the low patience level and very intolerant who just doesn't want to hear any shit from people, or the much, much, much more tolerant, patient person, right? Who, you know, by the time my day has kind of gone through and I've settled a bit emotionally and I've kind of gotten some shit done and you know, kind of at the end of the day, I'm a very, very different person. I can't believe I'm the only one who experiences life that way. Right. And by the time my day is done, I have gone through 20 different versions of myself as to how I think about the same things that yesterday I might have said some, you know, and I don't mean like I'm constantly changing my mind or something. You understand what I mean? The attitudes change, the emotions change, and we change as a result. And we can be almost completely different people from one day to the next in how we're thinking and how we're motivated and what's in our reasoning process. I sure experience a life of variety like that, and I think a lot of people do. I think everybody does. You know, I think of people that way. So I would move out of that debate completely, you know, by trying to identify a person with a label that way. Now, this back and forth of, you know, using it as a noun or an adjective or something, you know, being an unautistic versus an autistic person, same concept, same, all the way up and down the line, but we're going to use a noun or we're going to use an adjective. I don't care, personally. It doesn't change anything about the condition or the person, as I see it. So, yeah, exactly. Thank you, AGT mom. When you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Let's carry on. Medi, do you think Trump will go for a third term and a fourth, fifth, seventh, eighth like Putin did in the 2000s? No, I don't think I don't think our voting process and the public manifestations of our systems are going to collapse that quickly. I don't think Trump's going to get away with that. I think Trump would like to, but I don't think Trump has the dedication or will to do that. There are people who would like to see that, though, and they are pushing for that kind of thing. If that's something new, though, or they have more power to be able to do that than in the past, I don't know that that's true. You know, I don't think America's ready for a dictator quite yet, like a la Putin or Erdogan. Am I saying that name right? Right, Erdogan, the guy over in Turkey. Yeah, I don't think we're there yet. Right? I think come back in 10 years, and I think we're going to be having a very, very different conversation if we don't, you know, get something different here going on. But that's about a lot more than just finding a different leader to fill the shoes in the White House. You understand, this isn't all going to be solved by another election. I mean, I hope we're clear about that with all the things I've been talking about. You know, we have, like I said, there's forces at play. I mean, economics, right? Social forces. Now, big world economic forces that we're all becoming aware of. They've always been there, but now we're all becoming aware of, you know, our place on the international stage, or at least some of us are, and are trying to pay more attention to what the hell's going on and why. And those changes that are happening now have been coming for a while, and they're not good. Anyway, I don't think that we are there yet. That's my answer to the question, Mehdi. George Smiley. Hey, George. A Sea Org question. What's the best job in the Sea Org? The job that helps Scientology the least, but has the best work conditions. Obviously, such an ideal post position would still be horrible. Yes. Let me think about this for a second. One second. Probably a central files letter writer. There are people who sit all day writing letters to file folders. They have these vast cabinets of file folders, and every file is an individual who has bought books or services from Scientology. If you buy anything from Scientology ever, they're going to make a file with your name and address on it, and they're going to track you forever. This is why you must never give them your address or phone number. They will follow you. I don't mean follow you in real life. I mean, they will track you and trace you and keep sending you mail for the rest of your goddamn life. And the people who do that are the people I'm talking about right now, the central files, the letter writers, the letter regs. They just basically get to sit and write letters all day. As far as the job or the work itself, it's a cush job. You're writing letters or making some calls, right? It's really not that big of a deal. And pretty much helps Scientology the least, because even if you're sending out bulk emails, well, not bulk emails, but even if you're sending out bulk, tons of emails individually crafted to people, especially from Scientology, that stuff's just going straight into the junk folder for the most part. So yeah, I think that answers the question. Is the letter regs? Yeah. All right, carry on here. Ms. Tara Green. In these times where you find your oasis of calm, I enjoy the spring tree blossoms at the moment. Yes. Where do I find my oasis of calm? Lately, I've been finding it in a few places. I have been learning about absurdism. I mentioned that to you guys a couple times, I think. The idea, Albert Camus, not Camus, damn it. Albert Camus, French philosopher, comes up with this idea that nihilism, is not really a solution, or really not much of a thing, because at least the sort of end myself kind of attitude or end product that comes out of a meaningless universe, recognizing that the universe has no inherent meaning or purpose in it, and you have to come up with your own. Recognizing the absurdity of a universe that doesn't care about you, and yet human beings can't not care, right, about something. So it's a tough challenge to be human, uniquely human, because we have concepts of purpose and meaning that drive our existence. They drive everything about us. And one thing I'll say that I've never said before out loud here today about that is that purpose and meaning comes from our social nature. And yet we try to deny our social nature, and we try to live as though we are wholly individual. And I'm separate from you and them and thee and all of y'all. You're not me and I'm not you, and we're not at all connected, right? And I am totally my own person, and I think my own thoughts, and I have my own free will. We lie to ourselves 24/7 about our social existence and responsibilities and obligations, right? We are hyper individualistic in the United States, especially. So I say we, specifically referring to the United States. I am sure it's like this in many, many other places in the world, but we are really over the top with this here in the States. But nobody's got it fully figured out, right? Let's not go thinking everybody down in New Zealand has got it all figured out or something, right? There's a lot of very, very selfish people in New Zealand too. It's a human problem. But this idea that we tell ourselves we're wholly unique is a problem, because then we sit around in a vacuum trying to figure out our purpose. What's the meaning of all of this? Why? Look around. It's to be part of things. When people die, when they're about to die, when they're on their deathbed, when they're in hospice, what do they talk about? What do they think about? What ends up being important to us? Memories of connection and love and caring and getting along with other people. That's what matters to us all the way down to the bottom. And we sit around lying to ourselves about this or devaluing this. And we become hyper individualistic, right? And then we wonder why we have psychological and mental health issues. You gotta laugh. You gotta laugh. Because otherwise, it's just a Greek tragedy. And you can go that route. It's choice. That's what I'm trying to make the point of in the videos I'm making lately, right? Is you have choices. You don't have any choice in the shit that happens to you, but you have choices in how you react to it. And this is something that I've been working on for myself for a long time now, is choosing to try to be hopeful, optimistic. Like you can't, I found for myself that if I was waiting for the world to give me something to hope for or to be optimistic in or a reason to carry on, I was kind of looking in the wrong place, because I'm going to find those things inside of me and in my relationships to the things around me, both people and things, right? I mean, for example, I take a great deal of life satisfaction in my relationship with my dog, right? That's a part of my life that is very important to me. I take a much greater satisfaction and love out of my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my mom, my family, right? But it's those relationships. When you talk about what matters, it's those things. And that's why I encourage community. That's why I'm always talking about it for months now, is like make community, find that. I've been trying to find that, been working on it. It's going better than it was a few months ago. And so those are the places that I look to, when I got my head on straight. And if I'm having depressive episodes or anxious moments, or I don't have panic attacks as such, I'm not, that doesn't happen to me. But I definitely have depressive episodes, and I have times where for hours I will just go down a chute of rejection sensitivity, right? I have this, that rejection sensitivity thing that is part of ADHD. It hits me hard, and when that hits me hard, I now know about it. So I don't have the ability to stop it from happening, but I do have the ability to understand it and therefore mitigate it to a degree and not let it overtake me or be overly reactionary to it. I still make mistakes and I'm still impulsive, but I, check myself, right? And I have found that to be a way of dealing with, those issues. And in terms of the bigger picture stuff, it helps, right? And then the other thing that has helped me a lot lately, and I'm gonna direct it back at you guys, is when I know that I'm helping people in some fashion. Right? When you guys let me know that what I'm doing is helping you, that's what keeps me going too, because there have been times, many times over the years, where I have thought I needed to pack it all in and this is it and it's done, right? And I'm of no use of any kind whatsoever to anybody and that kind of thing, right? That kind of thinking can overtake, and it's horrible when it happens. But like I said, that can be the morning, and then in the afternoon, it's like, it's a little. I think the word is diurnal. For that major of a shift, but it can happen that way. Maybe some of you experience that. But whether you do or not, I think that all the things I'm talking about here might be, hopefully those are things that might be useful to you in trying to figure out your own process of how you find oases of calm.
you know, in these troubling times. You know, obviously practical rubber meets the road stuff, like taking my dog for a walk every day, you know, getting outside, keeping front and center the need for perspective, right? And to constantly be questioning myself and questioning my ideas so that I don't sink into, you know, certainties. You know, if there are bad habits that cults give you, it's that you dive into these absolute certainties that are not certain at all and are not even absolute either. But but we'll go there. So, you know, so not letting myself, not indulging my worst habits. There's a good way of putting it. Right? Fighting those bad habits. That's a way that I do that. Yeah. And then I think, about the fact that I know that we're going to make it as a species. So any kind of concerns or worries that I have about, oh, you know, but what's going to happen, you know, it's going to, however all this works out, you know, we're going to carry on. And for whatever reason, the way I think about the world, that gives me comfort. Probably said way too much there, but there you go. All right, Old Bay. I have to hit the thing and then I have to kind of scroll. Sorry for the back and forth on that. Old Bay, is it safe for tourists to visit the USA right now, or will they end up in a private prison in El Salvador or Louisiana? What about queer folks? Yes, it is safe right now, but yes, you have very, very good reason to be cautious. And it personally, I mean, it's safe, but that doesn't, I wouldn't necessarily take a tourist trip to the USA right now if you're from a foreign country or a foreign-born national or something, right? Even if you were, it's very up in the air right now. Things are very much in flux, and the courts haven't yet gotten this to a place where we're back to any kind of safety and security. It's all very loosey-goosey. Arbitrary, and that is another aspect of the sort of road of fascist behavior, right? Is that that the systems break down, the systems don't break down. Actually, that's the wrong way to put it. They morph into something, into a significantly worse version of themselves, right? And so, you know, the rule of law becomes the rule of the leader, and whatever the leader says is the law, right? That kind of morphing process is what's happening right now. And it only is able to happen when, like I said, you have a group of people who believe that the only way for this thing to carry on is to tear it all down, right? Destroying the world to save it would be the phrase Robert J. Lifton used for his book, describing this at a cult level. I would be cautious if I was anywhere in the LGBTQ spectrum right now, as far as travel here goes. But but I don't think that's necessarily going to be going to get you thrown up in El Salvador, some jail in Louisiana or something right away. There are a few cases of gross violations of our justice system and rule of law right now, but they are only a few. There are only a couple of those right now, and a lot of attention is correctly being put on them, like that guy in Maryland who got sent down to El Salvador, right? That is ludicrous, absolutely barbaric that this is happening at all, that anybody is being sent down to El Salvador, not just that guy. But you know, like I said, we're still in this early denial. Most people have their heads in the sand. They just aren't tracking with what's going on. Okay, Mespilism, the way of the medlar. Would you interview a Mespilism practitioner? Mespilism again. I'm gonna take a look at this again. I remember last time I tried to look at this, it was just nothing but confusion, but maybe you can help me. if we need to. Mespilism. What is this stuff? Yeah, this is... I remember this coming up before, and I couldn't find what this is. It's a fruit. There's some group or something that's going around this. It's a fruit-bearing shrub, the medlar. There is no recognized term or concept for mespilism, so I'm still very confused by this. Please email me with something so I can brief myself on this or something, because I don't know what you're asking me, and and this is the second or third time, and I don't know if it's my bad that I didn't figure this out last time, but I don't know what this is, and so and I am totally not remembering anything about the last time you asked me about this, except that this was the same place I was in last time. And I can't find anything on it. So please clarify this with me. Would I interview a practitioner right now? No, because I don't know what it is. So send me something. Okay. Once a witness, what do you think about the 20 billboards in LA from the Aftermath Foundation? I love it. I love it. I think it's a great, great, great idea. I wish the protesters had thought of it, a year ago. That would have been a really cool, effective thing to do. Because it's seed planting. Seed planting. That's what you do. And billboards are great because you don't have to stand there with a board. It's just there, and the locations they put them up were great, and Scientology doesn't have enough scissor lifts to block 20 billboards all over town, so they're just going to have to deal with it, and that's great. Just another sort of in the eye to Scientology. Okay. Apple cider vinegar. When are you next talking to John Atack? Would you do a stream with a historian about authoritarianism comparisons with your recent podcast? Okay, well, last week somebody asked me about John, and I do need to reach out to him. I didn't do that yet. So I will note that down again, because I should do that. Would I do a stream with a historian about authoritarianism? Yeah, I'd love to. Of course I would. I would definitely do that. Yes. All right, Lutz, Albrecht, any takes on Musk distancing himself from the big orange, like, for example, requesting no tariffs with the EU? Does feeling the pain, German Tesla factory, change him? It is an inevitable fact, inevitable conclusion that Musk and Trump are going to have a falling out. And that Musk will no longer be welcome in Trump's circle at some point, and vice versa. Some falling out or something, right? It's inevitable. I don't think the tariffs are that issue, but it could be a series of issues that build up rather than, some big explosion. There could be an explosion, but it will be the result of, a series of smaller things, right? So the tariffs, this business here with requesting no tariffs on the EU, or at least for his businesses or something, yeah, sure. I would be a little surprised if Trump wasn't already carving out exceptions for Musk's stuff, given that he pimped for Musk so glaringly and illegally, literally on the White House lawn. So I don't know, about the tariff thing specifically that you're asking me about, Lutz, but I'll take your word for it that that's what he did. Musk is, the way I see things, what I'm sitting here thinking about right now that I'll comment on is, I think Musk is painting himself into a corner that even he is struggling to figure out how to get himself out of, because the Tesla stocks are becoming worthless. And it's a direct result of his political meddling and interference across the globe that has brought that about. The Tesla brand was a brand of efficiency and future progressive technological advance, and a sort of a bleeding edge view of changing the world, right? By creating self-driving cars, or, you know, computer-driven cars, these efficient electric cars. It wasn't just a car, it was an experience, you know? I mean, this was all this really well thought of, so much goodwill, so much worldwide goodwill generated toward Elon Musk when he was cosplaying, I should say, as Tony Stark, which he's not. He's not Tony Stark in any way, shape, or form. Is he Tony Stark? He's gutless. He has no integrity. He has no sense of honor or decency. He has no real skill set beyond very, very precise things that he knows how to do in terms of some computer stuff and some, you know, I guess some engineering stuff of some kind, even though he's not an engineer and he's definitely not a computer coder, but at least a decent one. If you listen to coders talk about how he talks about coding, they're like, yeah, this guy has no idea. But there are a couple things he's really good at, but he's gone way, 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 way above and beyond that, as we've talked about. But he's also got personality deficiencies, and I'm not going to go into labeling, you know, because there's controversial labels connected with him, but I've come to learn most of them are self-diagnosed, right? I don't know what he's actually been diagnosed with at this point. He calls himself autistic and ADHD and this and that, but I don't actually know what that man is suffering from. I just know the behavior that I see, and the behavior that I see is, I'm not a clinician, so I don't want to lay too many more of those labels on him. I thought autism was something he was diagnosed with. I come to learn recently that that's a self-diagnosis. So fuck that. I'm not going to sit here and say he's got autistic issues. I don't know if he does or not at this point. I know he thinks he does, and maybe he does, but the way he acts is in a way that no one else but him exists. But yet at the same time, the narcissism that drives him demands that he receive just waves of admiration from other people. It's like an addict, and he just has to have his supply, you know? And he ain't getting it now. And he thought he was doing things, he thinks he's doing things that are going to continue to get him, you know, all this gratuitous supply of admiration. And in his world, he does still get that, but it's becoming a smaller and smaller world. It's like the shrinking world of L. Ron Hubbard. That's the shrinking world of Elon, you know, Tony Stark, Musk. And it is a shrinking world for him as an individual. And anyway, you know, maybe I'm over analyzing, but I think that's kind of where that guy is at. And he's crashing right now. He's crashing all that goodwill that he had. It's gone. I mean, people hate that man now. Hate him. You know, I mean, they've identified the Tesla car with him. There's other things to identify with Musk, but it's the cars, right? Because you can't go put graffiti on a spaceship, right? You can't go down to the SpaceX yards and you know, and key the the booster rockets, right? The SpaceX stuff. But you can access a Tesla, and you can take, you know, you can whet your appetite on that, right? Take out your anger against Musk for what he's doing, right? And he's interfering with, you know, with people's lives in a way that is, it's beyond reprehensible. I mean, it's disgusting. It's gross. It's such a blatant abuse of every bit of influence and power that man's amassed to himself, that he uses it to ruin people's lives by the hundreds of thousands. Blows me away. Once a witness, Vernon. I've heard that Scientologists in America go to Mexico to pay for their Scientology services because it's very affordable. How cheap can it be? Oh, pretty cheap. That you didn't, I mean, you've heard that because it's true. I have said it many times. Other people have reported on it as well. People go to foreign countries like South Africa or Latin America to do Scientology services from the United States because it is significantly cheaper in those areas because the cost of living is cheaper. And when the cost of living is cheaper, Scientology's formula for how much it charges for stuff is cheaper. So it can actually cost you less. Let's say you are Joe Schmo, Scientologist living in Nebraska for some dumbass reason, right? So you're in Nebraska. It could be cheaper for you to fly to South Africa, pay for room and board and all of that, and do your auditing services there, and then fly back, pay for all that stuff, than it would be for you to do your services at your local Church of Scientology or to have to fly out to LA or Clearwater to do stuff there. Obviously, the stuff that you can only do in Clearwater, so you can't pay some foreign country to deliver those services that are only at Flag. But outside of that, there are these bigger Sea orgs now, over in these other places. You could always have, fly to Australia, but now you can fly to Africa, et cetera. Anyway, you get the point. So yeah, that's a thing. And yes, they can be cheaper, but it all depends on the cost of living. The formula, if I remember right, and somebody can correct me on this if they know this, something like an auditing intensive should cost an average worker's wages for a month, I think it is, right? Like a month's wages. That's how much an intensive should be. I think that's what Hubbard said. It's either 2 weeks or a month. I can't remember. Anyway, that's what I got for you on that. Okay, also once a witness. Wow, it's almost already 2:30. Wow. Are there less women in the Sea Org getting pregnant and having abortions than when you were in the Sea Org? I believe that there are, because I think there are less people in the Sea Org, and also when you get pregnant, I think they kick you out now. I don't think they want you around. They don't. I don't know. Yeah, but I think it always depends on the person as to whether they really need to keep you or not. But couldn't say. I mean, I have been out for 10 years, so. Young Matador, hey, Chris, given the Trump tariffs, should we all band together and organize black market shipments of toasters and ovens into the USA? We'd make a fortune. I wish. Yeah, that's somebody asked on Reddit the other day, well, how come I can't just drive down to Mexico and buy stuff and then drive back over the border and avoid all this tariff stuff, not understanding that, when they talk about paying duties on stuff and, when you're at the border and they inspect your stuff and make you pay, that's what that's all about. Anyway, sorry, got something in my eye there. I think a lot of people over the next month or 2 or 3 or 4 are going to start getting I think we're going to be seeing an awful lot of, kind of explain it like I'm 5 explanations on tariffs and international trade and how this stuff actually works. Because the idea that a lot of people in America have right now about how this stuff works is laughingly, stupidly, ignorantly dumb. People have no idea how international trade or stuff works. And I am no expert on this stuff at all. But you don't have to be an expert to understand what a tariff is. And our own president doesn't, It's shocking how biased we are about our leaders, that we insist that they be smarter than us and more clever than us, and they know how things work, and they're always playing 5D chess or something. Yeah. All right. Instrumentalist. How would you remove emotionally based beliefs which you were indoctrinated into during early teenage years? Okay, great question. The first point, and the most important point when it comes to removing or changing, because that's really the better way to talk about it, you don't remove belief, you change it, right? Our thoughts, our ideas are constantly in flux. And when we have emotional attachments to our ideas, it can be, it's analogous to thinking about it like there's an anchor on the belief. There's something keeping it down, keeping it there. And then there is trauma. And trauma can be another anchor that can tie down incidents or events that are connected to our beliefs or ideas. So addressing trauma is crucial to being able to let go of emotionally based beliefs that you're indoctrinated into. When we use words like indoctrinated and emotionally based beliefs, then we're leaning in the direction of abusive behavior that's sort of laying those beliefs in, whether it was chanting or mantras or enforced punishments because you didn't believe hard enough, or you didn't have the memorized biblical scriptures, or you didn't dress in the right clothes, or you rebelled, or you were too worldly, or whatever, you know, you acted too banky, whatever the indoctrination system was. The implication here, of course, is that there is trauma laid in as part of this. Otherwise, it's just a matter of changing your mind, right? But you can't change your mind or let things go when they are laid in with trauma. Trauma is not something you erase. Again, it's something you address and you deal with. And I would very, very highly recommend to any ex-cult survivor out there or trauma survivor out there, anybody who's survived a domestic, gang, trafficking, cult, anything like that, I would really recommend you check out a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It breaks down trauma in a way that nothing else I've ever seen or read does, as far as a one-stop shop for understanding trauma. There's a lot in the book, and you don't necessarily need to cover all of it, but it's not academic. It's pretty common. It's pretty easy to read. And it is like a little Bible on the subject of trauma. It's the book Dianetics kind of pretends to be. I love describing it that way, and I think it's accurate. You've got to understand trauma, and you have to deal with it. That's just part of the process of recovering from indoctrination and belief, extreme belief. That's what I got for you. Obviously, individuals have different circumstances and situations. I'm broad shooting right now in answering a broad question. Okay. Okay, hey, no name in NW. I love the effort of Trump Doge team to cut costs from federal government overreaching. Wish good reps and senators from all sides would get behind the effort. I see the value in getting to a balanced budget. Okay. Here's my problem with the narrative of a balanced budget. Okay. My understanding of how things are working right now in terms of what Doge is doing and what the Senate, our Congress right now is pushing are massive cuts in government allocation. Money that's already been allocated to be spent by Congress is being held and cut, and people are being fired and let go, and agencies are being taken apart or dismantled by the executive branch, which has no authority whatsoever to do what it's doing. And that is being done so as to cut expenses that the government is committed to spending, and then through the budget process, which Congress is working on, cut future spending in such a way that it will afford tax breaks for the ultra wealthy in our society, so they don't have to pay even less of their fair share than they're not paying now. And this operation, this illegal operation that is being carried out by unelected officials, Elon Musk and his cronies in our government, is being called balancing the budget and getting our government organized properly. Well, I hope you don't like state parks or national parks or roads like international, like national highways. I hope you don't like those too much. Hope those don't have too much, you're not too closely tied into, whether we should have things like this, or a Veterans Administration, or a Department of Education, or an Environmental Protection Agency, or any regulations or stopgaps between corporate malfeasance and abuse and you. Let's take everything out. All the middlemen that have been protecting you through regulations and government oversight for decades now. Let's get rid of all that. All of it. All of it. So that there will be less government interference in your life. This is the narrative I understand you're being sold. And apparently feeding back to me. And I don't believe that this narrative is reality. Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe laying off and firing and threatening the jobs of hundreds of thousands of government employees is a sensible thing to do. And maybe annihilating whole swaths of our government infrastructure is a sensible thing to do with a machete. Not a surgeon's scalpel, but a machete, an axe. Maybe that's the sensible thing to be doing right now. But I don't think it is. And I don't understand why it is that anybody who wants our government to run according to the rule of law and procedure and according to our Constitution would ever support the wholesale slaughter and ripping apart of our systems of governance and management. It doesn't make any sense to me. Except as I understand that the people who are doing it and the people who are allowing it to happen are personally profiting to the tune of hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. We're talking about unimaginable amounts of money, the kind of money that the Mormon Church is sitting on. Big, huge amounts of money that we're not going to be at the receiving end of or the beneficiary of. All of those money and those assets are flowing up to the 1% and increasing the gap between them and us. And that means they get to maintain a higher quality of life and living for them and theirs, while we are suppressed, pushed into less and less quality of life, less availability of resources and labor opportunities for us to be able to realize the American dream for ourselves. Those opportunities are being sucked away from us with all of this Doge work that Elon Musk is so hard at work for us doing. That's my take on what's going on. So, yes, I've explained it. I've broken all this down already anyway, but there it is. And like I said, there's a lot of people right now who are in, a place where what I'm saying is just rhetoric. It's just doom speak. I'm a doom speaker. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm
I, right now, saying all the things I just said, I'm the crazy one. And I'm the doomer. And I'm just biased. And I'm just letting my biases carry me away. That's what I'm being told by people I'm trying to, like, hey, this is what's going on and I'm not okay with it. Oh, it's you. It's not the situation, it's you. I don't think that's true, but that's the response I'm getting from a lot of people, and it's disheartening, but it's what it is. So I've come to the conclusion that I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I'm going to talk from my experience and knowledge and what I see happening. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my predictions are wrong. That would be kind of good news to me, to be honest, but I don't think I am wrong. But I'm not, let's see. I can't change minds that don't want to be changed, right? I can't, especially through a screen. So all I can do is say what I can say and know that it's all just noise right now to a lot of people, and they have to get hurt personally before they believe it. And it pains me that that's true, because I'll say it's Chicken Little, right? Yeah. And then the sky does fall and people are like, oh, why didn't somebody tell me? You know? Rod Brownjohn, what part of the Church of Scientology doctrine was the hardest to get rid of for you, Chris? Okay, good question. For me, the hardest, there were two things, and it's a real coin toss for me to know which one. There was the PTS stuff, being labeled a potential trouble source because you're connected to a suppressive person, and if you get sick or have accidents, that's why. Oh God, it took me years to let go of that crap. Not rationally, not like with my rational mind. I gave it up on day one, right? I was like, yeah, it's bullshit. But the emotional commitment to it and the habit of thinking that way took years to finally, before I think it was 2 or 3 years before I finally got sick. And my first thought wasn't, I'm PTS, So that snap, those snap things, those neural pathways that are still built in there that you're trying desperately to undo, So that was one of them. But I think the stronger one and the bigger one for me was the emotional stuff. I really, really connected with Hubbard on emotions and communication in Scientology. I really thought Hubbard had nailed something dramatic and important, with communication and with emotions. And I dedicated an awful lot of my time in Scientology to trying to learn and understand everything Hubbard said about those two things. So I read all the books, listened to all the lectures, dived into all the stuff about that, because I wanted to be as expert of a Scientologist as I could so that I could be the best human being I could be. And communication and emotions seemed, kind of important to to that process, right? So I was all in with Hubbard on the tone scale and thetans having these different vibrations of reactions to their life and what comes their way in life. And I boy, that model of emotions, that idea of a ladder or a scale, and that there's good emotions and bad emotions, and we should grade these things. These ideas stuck with me for a really, really long time. And that's why I spent so much time unlearning it by learning more about how emotions really work, not Hubbard's fucked up bullshit nonsense about how they work. I mean, Hubbard analogized. Let me tell you just real fast. Hubbard analogized
emotions to the same kind of vibration that's caused by a washing machine cycling. You know, it causes a vibration. You can put your hands on a washing machine that's going and it vibrates. Hubbard said your emotions work that same way. And in fact, that you could shoot a vibration ray at somebody, like a particle beam ray of a certain vibration or frequency, he said, and you could create an emotional reaction in them with a vibration. Well, I'm pretty sure if you hit somebody with some energy hard enough they could feel it, you'll create a reaction. But the idea that you could micro-tune the frequencies of the vibrations, the wall of sound or whatever it is that you're hitting this person with, and you're going to make them angry or upset or sad or something, fuck off. What are you talking about, right? That is the most ridiculous crap. And I believed every word of it when I was in Scientology, because I was able to form a coherent, logical whole out of the thetan and the body and the vibrations and the energy field of a thetan and what it's doing to the body. I had it all worked out. You know, I was an active participant in my belief system. Anyway. So I think those are the hardest things to get rid of. Thanks for asking. All right. Good. We still have time here. P. Langton. I know I've been a little up and down during this show here today, I think for obvious reasons, but doing my best. Okay. P. Langton. Question. Hello, Chris. People ask you all the time about Scientology, but what is something that you would like to know? Is there a secret hidden in the dark that you would like to reveal? Ha! I mean, I am still figuring out why people act the way they do. I wish there was a simple answer for that. I wish there were a way. See, I don't feel like I struggle with the harsh realities of existence in the real world. I don't feel like I'm living in denial or existential denial about death or about taxes, right? The things that you have to deal with. What I struggle with is coming to a place of acceptance and trying to figure out a way to communicate or relate to other people in such a way that it can be easier for them to come to an acceptance about it. Because I think it's a healthier place to be than in denial or rejection of reality, right? I think we should believe in true things. And I think we should act towards manifesting true things, right? Vaccines work. I think that's an important truth in our world, that a whole swath of our population just absolutely has gone off the goddamn cliff on, right? To the point that they're bringing back diseases, right? So it's like I think truth matters. I think truth is important, and I think truth exists. And I think that there are true things that are universally true that we can figure out. And yet communicating those things to people is such a exercise in futility and frustration so often. And I would like to know either how I can accept that easier so that it doesn't frustrate me so much, or how to do it better so that I get better results. What's the secret in the dark to do that? I don't know. And I wish I did. I've been looking for it for a long time. I don't know that there's one simple answer, but it'd be nice if there was. It's sort of what I'm suggesting is, wouldn't it be nice if there were some simple answer there? But the problem, the plague of knowledge, of learning, is you just keep learning how much you don't know and how much there is to know that you're never going to have your wits around. And in that sense, choosing your lane for yourself, not because some asshole told you to, but because you know, I'm not going to be able to navigate all of this and learn everything and teach it to everybody. They don't even all want to know, you know? So how do I do this? And how do I do it in such a way that I can, you know, get along in life doing it too? I don't have that figured out yet. Maybe that's too much. I don't know. That's a lot, but, I mean, the other secret hidden in the dark that I would like to reveal is, you know, why it is that Star Trek has been corrupted beyond all comprehension in modern entertainment. But I don't know that I'm ever going to understand that. Okay. All right. Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. No Name in NW again asks, Ashlyn is presenting. Yes, Ashlyn Hilliard. She's going to be on the podcast in the next couple of weeks. I reached out to her a few days ago. We set something up. Y'all might remember Ashlyn from earlier, oh gosh, I think about a half a year ago or so, I did an interview with her. Anyway, she's presenting on DARVO at next Friday's Safe Portland meetup. Great. The many faces of DARVO, denial, attack, and reverse victim and offender. Yes. Are you familiar with this cult recovery effort? I absolutely am. Let's see. I mean, I'm assuming you're asking me about DARVO here. Otherwise, if you're asking me about the event, I'm familiar with the event. I get the newsletter from the Safe Portland meetings, and I will definitely, anybody watching from Portland, go to the Safe Portland meetups. They're great. I haven't forgotten about the Safe meetups at all. I've just been, you know, off on other things. As far as DARVO goes, I was very happy to see this event happening, and Ashlyn particularly speaking on it. She's very smart. DARVO is a very, very interesting behavioral observation. It's a series of things that predatory personalities do in resolving or dealing with conflict and controlling people. Basically, you have a predatory personality who will be confronted from time to time, or people will come at them because they're sick and tired of being victimized by this predator. Maybe it's at work, maybe it's a family situation, maybe it's a cult situation, could be wherever predators prey. And somebody comes and goes, hey man, it's not okay. You're going behind my back, or, you know, you're going to confront this person somehow, or you're going to like make it known that you disagree with what they're doing. And of course, the predator is preying. They are working on coercing and controlling and dominating and even abusing other people. That's their gig. So when they are confronted or have to deal with adversarial attacks at the predator will do this series of steps. And it tends to work really well. They will deny that they did anything wrong. And in fact, it wasn't me, it was you. I didn't insult her. You're insulting her right now by doing this whole thing. You're making this whole thing up. You're doing this whole thing. You're making this big problem out of something that shouldn't even be a problem. Why are you making a mountain out of a molehill? Why do you do this? What is it about you that makes you feel like you have to interfere in other people's lives, like you're doing right now? Like this would be the attack, right? This kind of thing. Deny that they did anything wrong, attack the person who's coming at them, and reverse the victim and offender. So they'll take this new additional step. On top of attacking the person who's coming at them, they will then turn the whole thing around and say, you're the offender. You're the one who is doing something wrong. I'm the victim here. I didn't insult her. I'm the victim here, right? And somehow, some way, they'll flip the script on you. And to the degree that they are clever and crafty and can do emotional, and information manipulation, however skilled, whatever particular set of skills they have to be able to pull that off, is to the degree of how good a predator they are. Because this is the meat and potatoes of being a predator, is doing DARVO, right? Doing this kind of thing. It's misdirection taken to a professional level is a way of thinking about it. And I think that's all I need to say about that right now. So, okay. So this looks, nope, got a couple more. All right, rhyme and reason. Do OT8s still audit recreationally, even if they've completed every auditing service offered on and off the bridge? Can they still go get a recreational session to deal with real life stresses? Okay. What you're asking about would be what's called a review, because no, OT8s should not have to go in for lots and lots of auditing recreationally, as you say. That's a very funny way of putting it. 1 second. Oh, okay. Tony's messaging me. We were going to meet up. I had a little bit more time. Okay, good. I'm going to let him know. And I will be ready by 30 my time. Sorry for having to deal with the logistics of my life while I'm live. Sorry about that. OT8s finish OT8 and they are done with the bridge as far as their progress of spiritual enlightenment goes. There are many, many other services that they can do on the bridge that are not, strictly speaking, grade chart services like superpower or more false purpose rundown auditing, or they can go do that running thing where they run around a beam of light on the 4th floor of the superpower building and do, that's called the cause resurgence rundown, and they can just go do that running thing, right? But that's a one and done. The FPRD is kind of a one and done. You do it and then you don't need to do it anymore. The superpower, you do it and you're done, right? So these services could be done, but they're one and dones. OT8s are encouraged to do lots and lots of Scientology training. So they're encouraged to go in the classrooms and do all the classwork and read all the books and listen to all the lectures and do that in the course room on check sheets, right, as part of paid services. That's something that they're supposed to be working on. An OT8 could have a car accident, or something horrible happen to them, because they're just people and things are going to happen to them. But within the context of the church, if that were to happen, they would go in session for what's called a review or a repair session. And the case supervisor would do some kind of interview, depending on what happened, and figure out what's going on. And there would be a correction list probably that would be run on the OT8. And they would probably have to go to either Flag or the Free Winds to do this, by the way. You can't just go down to your local Church of Scientology and do this as an OT8. You have to be audited by another OT8. And the person who looks at your folder has to be OT8. So you got to do all that stuff at Flag or on the ship. And that's kind of how it would go. And they would get their repair or review session. The words are used interchangeably. It's a review session or a repair session, same difference. It just means that you're fixing something that got broken. And if an OT8 had like a car accident or, suddenly their life fell apart because they got divorced or something, then they might avail themselves of a review session. So that would be long answer to your short question. Leslie Bishop. Chris, did you happen to see the video Carolyn Kennedy made about her cousin, RFK Jr.? She sent this to the congressional committee who was considering him for the HHS secretary. It is a must-see. I will have to watch that. I did not. I already have the lowest opinion possible of RFK Jr., so I don't know if I'm going to need to see that, but I am curious about it now, so I might check that out. But no, I did not see that. And the reason that I have a very, very low opinion of RFK Jr. is because of the things that RFK Jr. has admitted to doing and saying himself. Nobody had to tell me anything about this guy. I just went and watched him talk. And I learned about his life and his statements, repeated statements of justifications and explanations for truly insane, nutso behavior like eating roadkill. I'm sorry, but this man is certifiable, and in another time he would be in an institution. The fact that he's our Health and Human Services Secretary is an atrocity beyond words. Okay. I have very strong feelings about all this stuff, guys. Sorry, but I do. Study Meadow, what advice would you give to someone who gets physically ill, as in loss of appetite, headaches, etc., from anxiety, whether it be life situations, news reports, etc.? Okay, great. Okay. Well, okay. My advice is generalized to psychoeducation, right? Learn about the conditions that you have. This is irreplaceable. You must have that information. So learn about the conditions: anxiety, stress, trauma, depression, all the factors and components of it, right? That's, anyway, like I said, I don't think there's any substitute for that. Obviously, I would advise that somebody who is actually having physical manifestations of anxiety, I hope that you can get some professional counseling or therapy. I would definitely push in that direction, because there are many methods of treatment for anxiety. I'm not a trained clinician or therapist. I have a degree in the psychology of coercive control. That's what I am an expert in. When it comes to this kind of thing, with actually treating anxiety, I will definitely, my first thing is going to be go see a trained professional. Now, that being said, my advice in following up beyond the psychoeducation would be to find out, and this is what I do, so this is why it's my advice, right, is learn about triggers and boundaries and where those boundaries lie for you. What triggers you? What triggers the anxiety? Is it constantly in being manifested, or are there times when it is and it isn't, right? And when it turns on or kicks in, or you start feeling that illness, that loss of appetite, the headaches come on, what's triggering that? Now, this might be a question that your therapist and you have to sort out, but if you can find the answer yourself, or you can, kind of learn about some things and then figure some things out, go for it. All right. This is not hands-off territory. It's you, and it's your life. So feel free to dig in. Because then you could kind of start trying to maybe organize your life around managing those triggers, right? If you have triggers and you have those triggers, then you got to reorganize your life in such a way that you're not being triggered all the time. I mean, if I, for the first few years of coming out of Scientology, was triggered, was set off emotionally and physically by my trauma and my, and the latent experience of my Scientology experience, if going by a Church of Scientology triggered me, then I would stop going by a Church of Scientology, right? I would go around it, under it, over it, whatever I needed to do to not have that in my life. That's all I'm trying to say, right? Is reorganize things so you can do that. Sounds simple. I know it sounds easy peasy, and it's probably not, but it is an approach to take. Because you can't necessarily go in and, in the clutter of your mind and just dig up all the trauma and let it go. It doesn't quite work that way, does it? Right? But you can figure out what's triggering the trauma and mitigate or lessen that in your experience or in your life. Obviously, I would also recommend getting a physical checkup with just a general practitioner, general doctor, so that if there's any other health conditions going on that could be either causing or exacerbating the anxiety, that you also get a hold on that. Maybe there's allergies, maybe there's a dietary thing, maybe there's other factors. Don't mishear me on that. I am not saying you're suffering from anxiety because of your diet. I'm saying it can be a contributory factor. It can be part of the problem. It's not the whole problem. I don't know what the whole problem is. I only know what you've asked me in here in terms of this question. So, so again, the advice is going to be a little broad and a little general here, but those are a couple things I would start with. I don't know if those are helpful or if you've already heard that advice before, but that might be whether I would go. And you mentioned also, of course, news reports and whatnot. Social media and our exposure to social media and our exposure to news is something we have 100% control over. We might need to discipline ourselves, might be hard, but there's nobody else in the world responsible for the information you're exposing yourself to but you. So if you are being triggered by social media or by the news, it is your responsibility, and it is absolutely important that you hit the eject button, right? Don't expose yourself to that stuff. There's no reason you have to. There are other ways of finding out what's going on in the world and staying connected with people beyond having to make yourself anxious. So I'll throw that out there. Okay, hope that helps. Okay, guys. I have been a little all over the place today. At least I feel I have. But I hope that today's show was, interesting, informative, and educational in some fashion. Let's do the cards before we wrap up. Make sure that I'm good with Tony here too. Okay, good. All right. Let us randomly draw. False cause. Okay, your fallacy is false cause. Presuming that a real or perceived relationship between things means that one is the cause of the other. Now, this is maybe a little bit related to what we were talking about earlier with correlation is not causation. Similar but different, right? False cause. Pointing to a fancy chart. Here's the example. Rogers shows how temperatures have been rising over the past few centuries, whilst at the same time, the number of pirates have been decreasing. Thus, pirates cool the world and global warming is a hoax. False cause. Okay, so there's your logical fallacy for the week. Thanks for coming around, guys. Thanks for listening. I love your support. Love the fact that you come around. Keep doing so. I'll keep doing my best to educate, inform, entertain, and do what I can here. I love the support, and I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.